people want news right away, as soon as it happened. And so, well, it used to be that sometimes you'd have all day to think about an opinion before you wrote a story for the next day's newspaper, or even hours before the web wanted something. Now they want it as soon as the court makes a decision. So that means a lot of preparation in advance to have background on a case ready, a very quick reading of the decision, and, as succinct and, comprehensive view of a case, of a decision that you can do as soon as the court hands it down. But then you sort of rewrite that same decision all day long, adding more background, adding more comments, quotes from the opinion, quotes from the dissent. Sometimes you'll write 3 or 4 versions of the same big story. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I just sort of have in my head, or I have an idea for how the court could decide something. Sometimes the court will decide a case very narrowly. Sometimes they can announce a very broad rule. And so you have to keep in mind that one of those two things can happen while you're trying to prepare for what the court might actually do. But, I'll have 2 or 3 versions of something done usually that I can tweak and then send out. Well, I think what you try to do is make a story more appealing to readers by the way you approach it, by the way you bring in real people. For instance, if you're writing about a case before it goes to oral argument or before it's decided, an analytical piece takes all of those elements and tries to show you something bigger than the one decision at hand, either a trend on the court or what it might mean for other parts of the law or other parts of public life. All of the sort of basic information is the same, but then every reporter sort of uses that information in a different way to try to tell his or her specific readers why it's important. Well, I try to keep in mind that not everyone's a lawyer, and that even lawyers don't know sort of every area of the law very well because they become specialists. And so I try to think as just sort of a general person, why this case is important, why it should be important to general people. I try not to use legal jargon and hope that my editors catch me when I fall into it. I try to use real people when I can to illustrate things and to, explain it as simply as I can while still holding true to what the decision of the court actually says. Sometimes it's so narrow that it doesn't answer all the questions that we want to know about an issue. And so all you can do is be honest about that and say that the court decided this, but they didn't decide that. The best part of covering the Supreme Court, I think, is the constant churn of interesting issues that comes before the court. Every year it's a different plate of issues from time to time in a hearing. In a set of hearings, you jump from one issue to the next, sometimes in a day, sometimes in a matter of hours. And, for the most part, it's got to be fairly interesting to get to the Supreme Court. That sometimes can be the frustrating thing, too. You do have a lot of churn. You are constantly turning from one thing to another. Towards the end of the term, you might get 2 or 3 big decisions a day, and sometimes you can't spend as much time exploring one of them as you would like to. And so the end of the term can be a really frustrating experience, probably for everyone, because you just can't do as many things as you would like to. Well, that's when they hear arguments, that's when they issue decisions, but it doesn't mean that they all hibernate for the summer. There are always some issues that are coming to the court that they have to act upon during those months. Even if they're spread across the world, they still get the briefs, they still get stay requests, they still have to act on it, and we have to be ready to act on it as well. But it does slow down. It allows you a chance sometimes to concentrate on other issues. Sometimes in election years, I write about the voting wars that are going on across the country because there are usually always lawsuits about elections going on. The Washington Post is a paper in which politics is very important, and so sometimes there are a lot of things to cover over the summer that aren't specifically about the Supreme Court, but are about legal issues that often get to the Supreme Court.